Welcome to the Citizens Reporter. I'm the host and editor, Diana Longry. Thank you for tuning in. The Citizens Reporter is brought to you live from the SCC studios right here out of White Bear Lake. Now, we also do rebroadcast at other dates and times and in other studios as well. So if you're watching this on a broadcast date other than April 18th, 2014, well, unfortunately, you won't be able to call in and join us at the table here and be part of our discussion, but we would like you to get a hold of us on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. You can get a hold of me 24/7, and maybe we can get you out here to the program, or perhaps you might like to be behind the camera and be part of our volunteer film crew. Now, this evening I have with me Mr. Mark Bradley, a regular citizen reporter, who's here to help with this evening's news. Thanks, Mark, for being here.
Thank you for having me, and I'll try to run fast through this because we've got much to talk about. But, we've been talking about monopoly, and it seems to be always the big subject here because of, as I've tried to get across to the public, nobody talks about it anymore, and it's a dirty word that actually has been affecting the public the worst of anything around here. But at this point, Post Food is now bought Michael's Foods, which is a Minnesota company, and now is going to fold it into its big opening arms. So we're going to lose another food group to a big monopoly again.
And it's interesting that you bring up this topic of monopolies, because just last week, we had that film clip of Senator Franken, who was speaking out against the merger of Comcast and Time Warner, and that he felt that it would just create too large of a monopoly in the cable industry. And I agree with him, and I'm glad that he's speaking out against this.
One thing I wanted to touch on, I call Minneapolis the welfare city of Minnesota.
Corporate welfare.
Corporate welfare, yes, definitely corporate welfare. Well, now, they've got 5 stadiums that they have built, and now they're looking at that they're going to want to get that Nicollet Mall replaced, and they want to do this and that and the other thing. Now they're also going to, another one that I don't agree with, Hennepin County Medical Center. It's a fabulous center. I'm not going to try to throw rocks at it itself and the people that work there, but I'm saying, isn't it about time that they start to look at quit concentrating all of their hospitals in the central core city of Minneapolis? They used to have hundreds of hospitals out area of Minneapolis, and a lot of them have been shut down as they moved them into the University of Minnesota. You got it's called, it has its own medical triad there.
Well, and again, now that is sort of going to that concept of monopolies, and you have seen a lot of consolidation of hospitals over the course of the last 30 years. And a lot of that has to do with the structuring of even the medical insurance, and how there is a lot of bureaucracy with regard to the reporting of medical billings. And so a lot of the smaller hospitals weren't able to survive because of the extra additional administrative burden that was put on them. And as a result of these different additional regulations and laws, many of the smaller hospitals, they couldn't compete. And so then you see the larger ones swallowing up the little ones. And the question then becomes, where do our elected officials start to look at more long-term when they're putting laws into effect, to figure out what are the long-term consequences of the laws that they create? Is there just the short-term concern that they are addressing, or when they put a law in place, what type of long-term consequence will there be? And it doesn't matter whether or not it has to do with regulations of hospitals or the increase in proliferation of insurance companies and allowing insurance companies to run our medical system and our health care in this country, or whether or not it has to do with allowing monopolies in general. Elected politicians have to take a look at long-term consequences of the legislation that they enact.
And part of that is being service-oriented.
Yes.
And that's the biggest problem we have here when we're taking a look at what's happening in downtown Minneapolis. We also have a similar situation, but it's slightly different on the St. Paul side. St. Paul has now, with the Woodwinds and that area of Woodbury, has a campus that's been growing and growing, and that's where they all decide to locate in one area. But the reality is that that campus is filled up now. Now they're looking for a new location to go in. I'd recommend going over by St. John's where there is space to put there, or maybe
In
looking
Maplewood,
at
yes.
Maplewood, or the Gladstone site again, because of, as I've been saying, it'd be a great campus for some type of investment. Now they're saying there's no space anymore in that Woodbury site, and that would actually spread out the services so they're not all centrally locked into one spot. At least they're on the outer core, so it's easier to get to. But what we have with Minneapolis is because that's a corporation that's in the heart of Minneapolis, they don't want to move out and serve those outskirts areas. So yes, it offers better service than if you built it in Anoka, if you were down in, let's say, Apple Valley. But the reality is that maybe you should have one in Apple Valley and one up in Anoka, which they do have Anoka Hospital up there, because
Well,
my family comes from that area.
Well, it just occurred to me, this is just a crazy idea. I have not done any research on it, but it just was a thought that went through my mind as you were speaking and talking about Woodwinds and Woodbury needing to expand, and why not expand to Maplewood?
Right.
Well, I'm thinking about the lack of services to South Maplewood. And in South Maplewood, one of the large landholders down there is Ramsey County. Of course, they have the workhouse there. They've got the, the putt and pitch golf course or whatever it's called.
Right.
Basically it's not a full golf course, but it's for like a driving range, I guess is what it's called. You can tell I'm not a golfer, so what do I know about golfing? But yes, it's like a driving range where you can practice. But there is excess property there. What if Ramsey County, because I know that they're looking to try to move some of their property so that they're not holding so much property. When you listen to the Ramsey County meetings, they talk about properties they're trying to move. Many of them, of course, are in downtown St. Paul that they're trying to move. But what if they worked in partnership with Woodwinds and said, we have property in South Maplewood that's not that far from the Woodwinds Hospital, keep in mind.
Well, I know.
And then this way they could further their campus in South Maplewood in partnership with Ramsey County, in partnership with Maplewood. Maplewood's got that fire station that they're looking to sell. I know that that's not necessarily contiguous with the Ramsey County property, but maybe there's something that could be looked at there. I doubt that anybody will, but it was a thought that went through my mind.
Oh,
and
I
it
know.
would be a way to provide additional services to South Maplewood,
Now-
which is greatly needed.
Now, I had mentioned about our corporate welfare city, and
Of Minneapolis.
Minneapolis. And the thing is that in the Star Tribune, as of today's date, they're talking about a boom in building powers, job gains, and they're discussing the fact that it's all this investment that has been going on there, the light rail, that's been all built in Minneapolis, except for that extension that goes to St.
Right.
Paul.
And whose investment is it?
Yes, it's the public's investment. And that's where I'm saying it's kind of sad when you think about it. Here you've got all these cities that are in Minnesota that really desperately need an infusion of money. And the only other one that's seen any at all, and that's because it's ridiculous if they hadn't invested, was down there in Rochester.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it seems like they kind of put their nose up at the rest of the state and say, you have no value.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to move over
Yes.
now to the fact that we have a problem with these deals with these monopolies, and the monopoly I was referring to today is the railroad monopolies.
With the railroads, I mean, sure, there maybe aren't that many companies competing for the moving of freight, but there really hasn't been that expansion of a market though for the moving of freight though either. How would a new company come in and enter into the market if they wanted to become a railroad? You see what I mean? I think
Well,
that in some ways, there are some industries that the day has come and gone for whether or not it's going to be a new innovative industry. Something like cable, for instance, you can have innovations because there's technology, and you want to, as we saw in that clip from Franken, Senator Franken last week, is that one of the reasons why you don't want to have a monopoly in your cable companies, because then they will start to dictate what kind of technology they want to be created.
That's exactly what I'm trying to get at here, is that what we really have right now, the railroad companies are seeing money in their hills. And what I'm referring to is the oil.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And what we have
the
is...
the transporting of the oil.
Right.
Okay.
We're fighting over where the railroad tracks will run in South Minneapolis right now, because we've got the trains that have to go through the same circuit areas. So Dayton is talking about their tunnels and how much they're going to spend on their tunnels. Now, also, we had the farmers make a contention that they had... their grain that grew last year that's not being transported even now. At this point, they've had a whole winter, and they have the whole summer, and they should be able to get it all taken care of, but they're not. And the biggest problem they're complaining about is the fact that there's more money in their hills than they can supply in their grain.
I see. So they've become a lower priority than the transport of the oil.
Definitely so.
I see, yes.
And then it gets into safety and other things here, and that's why I'm trying to run this fast, because I know we got a lot to cover, and I know we don't want to spend too much time on it. But the rail execs, of course, deny it, and this was actually in the Friday, April 11th Star Tribune, that they were talking in the business section, deny any preference for crude oil. But the thing is that they are giving that special interest, and they're looking at how they can until they're going to lose it. And you got to realize they're going to be losing a lot of that transit once the oil lines are put in. And I've got
the pipelines.
The pipelines,
okay, yeah.
but the pipelines, when we're talking about, people aren't even aware. We're talking about two separate, different pipelines. One comes from Canada and goes out to Lake Superior, and they're going to be loading big barges out on Lake Superior to haul out through the St. Lawrence Seaway. But then the other one is the line that's going to be running through, I believe it's Minot, South Dakota, into Minnesota and all that, and ends up down here at the Pine Island.
The refinery.
The refinery down here. So we've got two pipelines we're talking about that are being torn up at the same time, and we're watching as our state government is rolling over and bowing to the powers to be. And if we don't think that that's bad, one of the issues, if you're a naturalist, you got to ask yourself, do you believe that there is a problem with the sun and the solar problems that are out there? That maybe we are putting too many carbon deposits up in the sky? Well, then I think the biggest question is, why are we pumping so much oil out of Dakota at this point, since right now they don't have the capacity to ship any of the natural gas, so they're actually burning 1.4 million gallons of natural gas a day.
Well, and that's a very discouraging statistic, because all of that energy that could be used is just being frittered away.
And you got to remember, if you happen to use natural gas, oil, coal, it doesn't matter. Remember, that's X amount of BTUs that were burnt off. They consider them of little or no value at all. They actually burn them rather than saving them. The reality is that we should have probably capped about half those wells until we could get a proper delivery service in there. Instead, what we've seen is where in the state itself, They have actually had trains that have delayed in the city. Remember I mentioned last week, they had a train that was broken down for 2 days in the heart of the city where it was supposed to be shipping the oil out of because they could not get anybody there. The crew walked off the train, and it took 2 days to repair it and get it out of the city. So the north side of the city could not even get to the south side of the city because this long train was blocking all the railroad tracks.
Oh, that just seems like a nightmare. And in this issue, talking about the proper conservation and harvesting of our petroleum resources, which includes the oil, the natural gas we're talking about. Keep in mind, many of these fuels are being obtained through fracking, and Congress, I believe, has the ability to look at, first of all, the practices of fracking. They also, I believe, have the ability to look at how resources are being conserved or harvested. I mean, because this is really totally a harvesting of the resources from the land. And look to the long term. And if indeed all that natural gas is being burned off, how many years worth of natural gas energy would that be for the United States in the future? Because keep in mind, having an independence of foreign petroleum products is important to our national security. And so Congress can always tie it back to that conserving our domestic resources is important for national security. So our Congress people, Betty McCollum, Keith Ellison, they should be right there on the forefront because they claim to be environmentalists, but here we have an extreme example where it is not environmental, and we are also losing and wasting our natural resources that could be used in the future. So they should be coming to the forefront and talking about this at their town hall forums and talking about what are they going to do about it. I want to know, what's Betty McCollum going to do about this issue?
And finally, we have one other point here that I haven't yet brought up, and I was letting you go on that so that, because it's as important, if not more important, is the fact that right now, when they are shipping it through our cities and all the cities throughout the United States, two things are happening. First of all, they're improperly labeling the oil so that we aren't aware of how hazardous. It's more explosive, the stuff out of the Dakotas, than a lot of the heavier oil out of Alaska. So the reality is that when we get this stuff through, it's considered to be a level higher in in action. But on top of that, because of Canada has a rule that says if you're shipping our oil or you're shipping somebody else on our lines, you have to have it in a tanker that is not labeled 111P, I think it is. I'm trying to find that article here. I had it marked here for a second ago. But what it refers to is the fact that these are the tankers that are not up to snuff. Remember I told you about that they are building a better, stronger tank car because of this is more high volatility?
So it has to go to the quality of the construction of that tanker.
Right.
And how safe it is in transporting that petroleum product, correct?
Correct. And what's happening is, because Canada will not allow the poor designed cars in their country, we are getting them shipped in our country. Older oil, here it is. And if you're looking for it, it's in the business section of April 18th, Friday, today.
Yeah.
So go to the Minneapolis Tribune, and if you want to read it, it says older oil cars may end up on U.S. rails. And you've got to realize these are not just a couple of tank cars that we're talking about. These are the type of tank cars. Remember what I said about the city being shut down for 2 days when they break down? These are the ones that are going to go 100-car long.
Wow, wow.
So how many of them are time bombs in there? All you need is one. But if we're talking about 50%, you can have one heck of an explosion. And that's the question you got to ask yourself. What is your government doing to protect your own health? We've seen what's happened. What was it? It was out east. Remember that one one of the original tank car lines blew up, and then they had the one that was in South Dakota, I believe, that blew up.
And again, this is the type of regulation that is needed at a national level because trains travel throughout the nation. It's not just limited to within state boundaries. So this is an issue that Congress can take up.
And see,
Whether or not, what are the standards for the tanker train cars that are transporting the oil and the other hazardous materials across our United States?
And see, because Canada has stronger laws, the monopolies are saying, hey, as long as we can get away with it, we'll do it in our own country. They don't even wave their flag anymore. If there's a book you want to read Rockefeller, because in that book they talk about his whole way of developing his company and that. I'm not saying he was a bad guy. I'm saying it gave you the picture back then on a person who was taking advantage of a system.
About the insight into how to and why to build a monopoly. What
Right.
are the benefits of having a monopoly?
And actually, if you break up a monopoly, there's more money in it after you broke it up, and everybody's going to make more off of it. The idea of monopoly is you're keeping everything under one person's control, and then he doesn't want you to know how much money is in it because it will hurt him in the long run for power he is using.
Yep, very true, very true. Well, that's a great tie-in with all these articles and showing how with the oil and the trains and what's going on between Canada and United States, and also letting our viewers know how many gallons of natural gas is being burned off every day.
But think about it. Just putting a value on a gallon of natural gas. If any of you out there happen to have natural gas heating your house or doing your stove or that, how much are you paying per gallon? And figure out, what did I read there? I think I read it was 1.4 million gallons. Take the number that you paid on your last bill for that per gallon of gas and figure out how much it would be in dollars that they are burning per day.
Right.
Not per year, not per century, per day.
Right. Incredible. Now, coming up next, we are going to continue on with some of our discussions that we've been having about the upcoming redevelopment of the Gladstone area of Maplewood. Now, keep in mind, while we talk about the Gladstone redevelopment, many of the principles and the ideas that we talk about can actually be applied to other communities, because many communities in the metro area are being faced with this issue of redevelopment, that they may have some older neighborhoods that they want to redevelop and that they want to give them a new direction, or that they want to spiff them up, or they have some other big scheme. Or
Just like Brookdale was.
That's right. And so the question always is that how does a community establish their public policy and their plan for redevelopment? Well, most of the time, even though they pretend to include the citizens and the citizen comments, it really isn't originated from the citizens. It's really originated from city planners who basically have gone to some planning classes and are saying, gee whiz, we could put some of these things that we learned in school in practice in the town that we work for. Now, I'm going to have us travel a bit down memory road here with our first clip. And the reason I bring up this first clip is that it's always good to remember where your community has come from when they're talking about redevelopment. Now, in the case of Maplewood, the Gladstone redevelopment plan actually was something that started late 2003, early 2004. And by October 2004, they were actually looking at hiring a master planner who was going to help them put together a big plan on how to redevelop Gladstone. And what's important about this clip is several things. You will notice that 3 of the council members that are on the council then are council members who are on the council today in 2014, 10 years later. So if those council members today claim ignorance about what is going on or the past history of the Gladstone redevelopment or what was discussed, can we believe that? Because we have film footage from 2004 showing they were there. They were part of the elected officials who made the decisions. And also we should notice that the community planner who was putting all of this together is Melinda Coleman. So today in 2014, when Melinda Coleman pretends like she can't quite remember or didn't quite know what happened with Gladstone, can we find credibility in that when she's the one that's proposing who the master planner should be for hiring? So let's take a look at our clip from October 2004.
Now we'll move on to citizen.
No, we have a number 5, remember?
I'm sorry. Number 5.
An add-on.
Okay. Hire master planner for Gladstone, and this is for Melinda Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Cardinal, members of the City Council. Earlier at our council manager workshop, we discussed the process and the need for hiring a master planner to work with us on the Gladstone redevelopment study. And because we can't actually do business at the workshop, you asked to have it on the agenda. It was placed on the agenda to direct staff to, or authorize staff to hire a master planner. It's our intention to bring that back to you on November 22nd for approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
A call response.
And a second?
Second.
All right, motion and second to hire a master planner for Gladstone and have that back to us on November 22nd.
You didn't say anything.
Any further discussion? Take a vote. Marv? Aye. Jackie?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Will?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Now,
what is interesting about this clip that, again, folks who may not have been in Maplewood at the time or may not have realized this at the time, is that in 2004, workshops were not televised. And so we have no film footage from that workshop where they obviously talked all about the hiring of the master planner for Gladstone. And when you heard Melinda Coleman say we can't do business at the workshop, that actually is an inaccurate statement because they do plenty of business at their workshops. All councils have workshops and all councils do plenty of business at their workshops. So that's an inaccurate statement. What she really would have and should have said is that the council doesn't take a vote on an action at a workshop. And I think that's fairly consistent for most councils in most municipalities, is that they do not take a vote on an action at a workshop. Now in Maplewood, now it's 2014, we do televise all of our workshops, which is an important thing for citizens so you know what those working discussions are. Now here at this council meeting in 2004, citizens, they had no idea what the conversations were. The council didn't go through a summary of what their workshop discussion was. Melinda Coleman did not go through a summary of what their workshop discussion was. And citizens were left in the dark. At least we've come a little ways in that we have our workshops now televised. Let's fast forward now up to 2014. At the recent Planning Commission meeting, they were given some of the plans that were being rolled out and how that they were going to now redevelop some of the infrastructure, the streetscapes that we've been talking about on this program. And so let's take a look at this next clip where they are explaining some of it to the Planning Commission members with regard to the area that they're going to be focusing on when they redo the streets in the cross hairs of Frost and English.
The improvements that are being considered in this area is the reconstruction of Frost Avenue. It's in poor condition. In addition, we're looking at installing some center medians in locations similar to what was done in the Phase 1 project. We're also looking at improving the pavement on English Street, burying the existing overhead utilities. That was done as a part of the Phase 1 project, and it's being proposed as a part of this project as well. The extension of sidewalks, trails, lighting, street furnishings, just a number of amenities to improve the condition of the area. We're looking at stormwater improvements and consistent with Maplewood's approach, looking at rain gardens and infiltration techniques, since it's a big part of how the city likes to do things. And then in addition, while we're in the area, City Parks Department has asked us to consider looking at potential improvements to Fleet Check Park, as well as improvements in the Savannah area, basically the interface between Frost Avenue and the entrances into the Savannah area. This is a graphic that kind of shows the project area. Again, it's about 2,000 feet of Frost Avenue, west of the English Street roundabout. Shows reconstruction of the streets, shows a number of landscaping enhancements, rain gardens on the south side in the area of the Savannah, and then a center median really through the redevelopment area. I've got a cross section that kind of shows that. So Frost Avenue would go from a wide, 48 to 52 foot wide roadway to more of a parkway type setting in the redevelopment area with a landscape center median, some travel lanes in each direction, as well as some on-street parking. And you can see the street lights and some of the landscaping enhancements consistent with the improvements that were done as a part of the Phase 1 project.
I believe we have a telephone caller.
Okay, well, let's invite our caller to the table. Caller, thank you for calling in. Questions or comments?
Well, I've got a comment. This is Ralph. I've really got a problem with what was shown on the screen there about the condition of the streets there. If we got that poor of engineering in our city that a street isn't any better than that when it was just done here not too many years ago, and that was my comment. Thank you.
Well,
I kind of agree with him.
Yes.
I think if it's that bad a shape, shouldn't we be taking and putting some type of suit against the original contractor? Because if we have to dig into our pockets to redo it at this point, and the thing was that it didn't take out the roundabout, which was my biggest complaint with the whole thing. I think the streets came out nice, but they're going to narrow them again?
Well, here's the thing, is that one of the commissioners actually brought up the point about English Street, because you heard how that they were going to reconstruct or do something, resurface English Street from the roundabout to Highway 36, and one of the commissioners brought it up and said, wasn't that just done within the last 6 years or so? And then they're saying it's getting in poor shape. Well, my law offices are right there in the corner of Frost and English. And the other day I decided to really take a look at English when I'm driving from my office to 36. And believe it or not, there are places where the top layer of the tar is off. And I'm thinking, why is this? Because it goes, again, to your point, Mr. Bradley, what was the construction like? I mean, it should be lasting longer than that. Certainly homeowners, when they are having a road reconstruction project going on in front of their house, they're told that this new road is going to last 35 to 40 years. And here we've got frost, and gee whiz, I think the frost heaves have hit Frost and English. So let's take a look at this next clip then, where we're going to get into where some of the commissioners are starting to bring up questions that they have.
Yeah, you had in one of your bullets mill and overlay for English. Are you referring to just the part of English south of Frost? Because English was just completely redone about 5-6 years ago from 36 down to Frost.
Correct. Basically what's being proposed, the condition of the roundabout itself is actually in pretty poor condition, so that will be reconstructed along with the Frost Ave.
Oh man, I'll tell you that.
Hey, didn't we save a lot of money with that roundabout? I mean,
the roundabout actually, well, there's some contention between the developers or the planners there, and and some of the folks on the commission about when that roundabout was put in, but I believe it was 2004, right about the time that they hired that city planner, the master planner for Gladstone, because I was on design review board, and we had to approve that roundabout, and the big contention was whether or not you can put big trees in the middle of the roundabout. I voted no for putting trees in the middle of the roundabout because I didn't think that was good for visibility. But again, I drove around that roundabout after having heard this contention that that roundabout is in bad shape. And I had driven around there now, and it looks like it's in good shape to me. It's my recollection that Maplewood spent about $60,000 on that roundabout, that was matched then by Ramsey County, so that, that would mean then...
It's quite a bit more.
That's right, that it was probably $100,000 or more to put in that roundabout. I know that the city workers maintain the vegetation there every summer. But it doesn't look like it's in bad shape to me. So the question is, why are they saying this? Why is it that they want to retool that roundabout?
But at the same time, let's also take a look at the other two roundabouts they built at the same time in this up and down Frost. Remember, they have the one...
But they didn't build those at the same time, though.
Well, they were
similar in time are the ones
right.
actually in Legacy Village, which were built about that same time.
Yeah.
So I wonder what the condition of those might be.
Right, but also I was going to say the one that's down farther, closer to Highway 61 there.
Right, that's about a year old, yes.
That one's angled.
Yes.
So it's taking a lot more stress, and we've also seen quite a few accidents at that site. So my question is, if this one has not had the type of accidents and problems that one's had, you got to ask yourself, should we build any of these roundabouts, or are they a fallacy of some guy who wanted to push a lot of take a lot of money from cities real quick?
Yeah, there you go. Well, let's move on to the let's move on with our clip and see what the rest of it is.
Off of the roundabout will be a mill and overlay, so that's in an area that wasn't improved before.
Okay, how old is the roundabout?
I don't know, Tom, do you know? It's probably, I know it's more than 10 years old.
Yeah.
10 to 15 maybe?
About
Yeah.
that.
And it's falling apart?
Well, and the mill and overlay is really to, replace the top couple inches of the pavement versus a complete reconstruct, whereas the pavement along Frost Avenue is actually older, and that's getting the more significant reconstruction technique.
All right.
So, yes, just as we were discussing there, something about that mill and overlay, and yet when they put the roundabout in, I don't think that they just left the asphalt the way it was when they put that roundabout in. I think that they reconstructed the asphalt bituminous roadway around the roundabout when they installed the roundabout.
See, in my mind, I remember.
I'm pretty certain they did.
Right. I seem to remember that it was all excavated at the time. So that's kind of it's a fallacy. This guy kind of... he should be writing fiction. He really should be. I mean, he could really do Robinson Crusoe or something. I mean, he does a good job of it.
That's right. Well, let's take a look at our next clip.
And in your remarks, you said that senior housing was targeted for this area, and then you mentioned the new development that was down on the west end of it. My understanding was that senior housing was also supposed to be part of the new development that's going in where the bowling alley is. Has that changed?
No. No, Commissioners, that has not changed. That is considered Phase 2 of that redevelopment project.
All right.
Yeah.
So now we're getting our phases all mixed up because we're talking about Phase 2 of the Gladstone redevelopment plan, but only Phase 1 of the Sherman and Associates construction of their high-rise at the corner of Frost and English.
And I don't believe that when they actually proposed the shores down at the other end with their own little crop circle, I call it, but the circle, at that time, that was supposed to be a project in itself. It had nothing to do with anything that was up farther there,
No.
as far as that went.
That's correct. And actually, in the Gladstone Master Plan, which was approved in 2007 based on extensive citizen comments, because the council at that time was committed to having citizen comments being included as part of what the plan was, that the Shores area was especially designated as an area where there would be this type of senior housing. It was designated
Right.
as that and intended for that. So let's take a look now at our next clip, because we have quite a few clips to move on through.
One of the things we struggled with when we was on the task force is we wanted people to use the Savannah as a recreational area and as a walking place and stuff like that. And the biggest problem we were trying to deal with was, how do you get people from the north side of Frost across 4 lanes of traffic? The original task force recommended a BIBO underneath by Fleetcheck Park. That was taken out by the, and I guess the problem we saw was that if you develop the villages, or whatever they're calling them, and you intend to have senior citizens living there, you're not likely to get senior citizens to want to cross 4 lanes of traffic, and even if it is a crosswalk. So what is the plan for getting people from the north side to the south side to use the Savannah?
Yep, yeah, that's a good question, because you're correct. The history of the Gladstone redevelopment area was that there would be an underpass crossing, recognizing that there will be a lot of connections between Fleetcheck and the Savannah, as well as the redevelopment area in the Savannah.
Now, when you look at that map, you realize how far away the Fleetcheck Park is really from the corner of Frost and English. And while the city planner there is saying, well, it was part of the master plan, well, it was part of the 2004 master plan that the master planners were all coming up, but it wasn't necessarily part of the citizens plan, because quite frankly, many people understood that human nature is not to walk a half a mile away just so they can cross the street. That human nature is that you're just going to cross the street. So the commissioner's question is very well founded in that, how are you going to get people to be able to just simply cross the street? Now, I will share with the viewers that when I was mayor, this was a big issue about how are we going to do this? This is not a new issue. And I actually had a conversation with a company out of Arizona where they specifically work with various different types of crosswalks to make crossing safe for pedestrians. And the gentleman that I talked to had a number of suggestions of what could be used, and some of them, even though that we are in a northerly state, are solutions that you can even utilize in a northerly state where you have snow. And one of the other concepts that he said is that you really cannot have pedestrian crossings close to a roundabout, because it can be dangerous for pedestrians, because cars are busy going around the roundabout. They're not really looking for pedestrians. They're concerned about other vehicles entering or exiting the roundabout. And so it's not really the place for people who are on bicycles, on motor scooters, or those motorized wheelchairs, or for foot traffic. And so he said that there are certain standards that they follow as to how far back those crosswalks should be from a roundabout, and that from what I was describing of and the distances I gave him, that he said that Maplewood was not within the standards that they would recommend when it comes to having crosswalks somewhere within the vicinity of a roundabout.
And one final thing to throw into there is the fact that when you're thinking about all this stuff, remember, when we're talking about English and Beam, which is what you're
English and Frost?
I mean, English and Frost there. What we're really looking at is the fact that that the elder complex isn't going to be built for a couple of years yet.
That's true.
And what we're really looking at is that the buildings that you're seeing that are going to be closest to that intersection are actually the workforce buildings. So the elderly are actually going to walk about 500 feet up to just get to Frost Avenue before they can cross it any place. And then you got to decide which side they're going to be on, the side with your offices or the other side where the bowling alley used to be. And in that case, we're still going to have to cross Frost at some point. But it's the type of thing that what elder person is going to want to walk 500 to 1,000 feet to get to a crossing, to get underneath or over, because of it's just beyond me. And that's why I said that this was an incomprehensible, idiotic plan from the get-go that should have never been instituted because it didn't make any sense from the start. And that's why...
That in reality, maybe the city of Maplewood should have been looking for other different type of grant money rather than going to the Met Council looking for grant money that's tied to affordable housing, perhaps looking for grant money that has something more to do with economic development, because it's all about what types of funding are you looking for to enact what type of public policy that you're trying to put in place. And the city of Maplewood, quite frankly, was only centered on going to sources of funding for housing, not for economic development, such as office buildings or other types of campus ideas like you've had.
Right.
Now let's skip over, let's skip to the next a clip here.
It's hard to see on this exhibit. I can't point it out, but so basically just where those center medians start, the goal in that area is, again, we're going from a wide roadway with no center median into a situation where we would have a narrower roadway as well as a center median for refuge. So the conversations we've had, is there a mechanism to try to provide a safer pedestrian crossing in that area, basically between kind of the corner of the Savannah and Fleetcheck, maybe a raised table scenario where people have to slow down for that. Maybe it's a pedestrian actuated flasher button to help with that. So I guess the thought was a couple of things. One, narrow the roadway, provide a center median for refuge, and then look at some new technology, like I said, maybe a flashing light system to help warn people that that's a pedestrian crossing at that location.
Okay, because one of the things we look...
So, Mr. Bradley, did you hear the switch in the words there? Because keep in mind, where are these people supposed to be going to? They're supposed to be going to the neighborhood preserve, the Savannah, which, though we've now heard from one of the commissioners, is going to be a recreation area. So now the refuge is going to be the median. So now the medians are going to be the refuge rather than the Savannah is the refuge for the wildlife.
Hey, Diane.
So we don't have a refuge anymore for the wildlife, but we're going to have a refuge for the pedestrians.
Well, you got to realize, what was the complaint you had with the circle there about trees in the middle of it? Did you notice in those drawings, they all said trees in the middle of that? That, to me, that looks like you're playing road tag with the pedestrians. You're going to run across, and yes, it is going to be a refuge between the cars going one direction and not seeing you, and when you jump out from the bushes and trees to try to get across the other part of it. So we are playing a game of road tag here now.
That's right. You know, and neither one of us, Mr. Bradley or I, have gone to city planner school or have gone to, public works training sessions. So we'll just put that out there right in the get-go. Perhaps there's something we're missing. But I think we've all had to do the jump through a median like that where there's all this vegetation where the cars can't see it either way. And quite frankly, you're taking your own life into your hands.
And usually, they don't usually keep those up too well. So when you're trying to cross it, you're going across bushes and weeds and all kinds of thistled plants in it. So it's not easy to get up there, but you're going to have to jump in and get yourself scratched because you're not going to want to get killed.
Sounds like a plan. Well, let's take a look at our next clip.
one of the things that I would ask the city to think about.
Let's go up to the next clip now, to the next commissioner's comments.
How wide is the median there by the village? Oh, the median.
How wide is it? How wide is the median?
Yeah, how wide will it be? That'll give us some space for people to cross.
Yeah, so it's intended to be 12 feet wide for a couple different reasons. One, to provide that refuge for the pedestrian crossing, and then two, also to provide adequate space for landscaping through the area.
Well, they'll have to deal with 2 lanes of traffic one way, they can go to the median and wait.
Correct.
So it isn't quite as tough with a median there.
Correct.
Of course, nobody brings up the issue about the curb. What happens to the curb?
That's right.
I mean, are we going to have it be that there's no curb in certain areas of that median? Or according to the diagrams, we see that it's a curb all along the whole way. And the question that the commissioner also was asking to start with is, how long is it? Well, the length of it is the entire length of that block that the Maplewood Bowl is on. And so that's the length of it. And so when you're looking at that kind of a length and the way it's designed, how is anybody who is in a motorized wheelchair or a scooter, how are they going to get across that median? How is that going to work?
And also remember, the one thing he did answer was it's going to be 12 feet wide.
Mm-hmm.
So on top of that, when you roll in there, and even if you got an angled ramp to go up, remember you're going to have to go across that ramp. You're going to go at least 10 feet across, and then you got the ramp going back down, and then you're going to have to make sure that when you go down that you've got an open space to run that vehicle.
Right, because you need visibility.
Right.
And that's an issue with all trails that cross a roadway, is having proper visibility, that you don't have a lot of vegetation where that trail meets the road, that you need to clear it back so that there is good visibility. And this actually is contrary to those principles. I mean, that's why the DNR on their trails, they brush back the trail from the road so that there is visibility there. See, this is totally counterintuitive to good design principles that are used with regard to trail systems.
That's right. And if you go to Grand Avenue, you don't see, they cut the grass right down when they got that center medium when you're up in that area of St. Paul. And that's the same thing, that if we're going to have it, it might be a nice boulevard, but let's understand we have to be kind of a little common sense about this stuff.
Exactly. So we have time for one more clip, and let's take a look.
We had a developer in here in January, I believe. So has this property been closed on by a developer yet?
I don't think so. Everything is positive. They're still working towards that end, but to my knowledge is no, not quite yet.
So the grant money is irrelevant to whoever develops the property. Like the $1 million is to basically raise the Maplewood Bowl and clean that property up, right?
Correct.
Yes.
So that's not dependent upon whatever. Because I remember I asked that guy, and he said that they had a option on the property for a while.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think the city would want to say that $1 million could go for any particular use. I think the project that we see pending by that developer looks like an appealing one that would be good for the neighborhood. I can only guess at something we may not prefer in there, and so I don't honestly know, to tell you the truth, what the terms of that money are. If it could go for any purpose to acquire that land, or I don't know if John knows, but my own feeling is we probably wouldn't want to see it used for just anything.
Right. No, my concern is that, say these guys pull out, that money doesn't go disappear someplace else, and the next guy comes along to redevelop that property, then that money's not there anymore.
Yeah, that could happen.
The infrastructure component of that grant application was specifically for the city to redevelop the infrastructure, and that happens irregardless of the other component.
That's the 900,000, right?
Right.
The fellow in the red shirt, Tom, you know, he's the senior city planner. He's been with Maplewood forever, and he says he doesn't understand how the grant money works. And so he's asking John, the guy who was standing there in the suit, who's the consultant. Now, which one do you think would be more likely to have the answers to the questions? The city staff person or the hired consultant?
Well, the one thing I gotta say is that, geez, when he's talking about this, I just heard that there's no money, no commitment yet. This is a crapshoot. This is like going to Vegas to me.
Yep, exactly. So that is a good thing to keep in mind. It's like going to Vegas. Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Bradley, for this episode, being here for this episode of the Citizens Reporter, and thank you to our viewers for tuning in again this week. We'll see you next week. Till then, bye-bye.
Welcome to this episode's producer interview. I'm here with our featured producer, Diana Longry. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much for asking me to be here. It was quite a surprise, but I'm honored.
Good. How did you feel winning one of SCC's awards for sets, props, and lighting excellence?
Well, I was actually surprised. I mean, I have won awards before for Off the Record News. I've gotten the awards for Best of Live Programming several times. But it was nice that somebody took notice of my use of lighting, props, the perfect placement of those foliage trees and the flowers and the bookshelves and the colored lights. So it was rewarding to know that somebody was noticing the backdrop, although I would have liked to have gotten one for content. But I don't know if that was a category. So
Well, there's still time for that too. Your shows, I mean, you have so many shows on our channel. There's always time for that. What's in the future for you at SCC? You've done so much already.
Well, you know, I'm not sure. Do you have an opening available? Perhaps. No, seriously, what is in the future for me is continuing to do programming. But also, I think what's in my future is to continue to be a leader in the community who is advocating for public access community in all of our communities. I am very disappointed that a number of communities no longer really allow citizen programming on their public access channels. And to me, that is just something that is unfathomable. And I think it is so important that the citizens have that opportunity of being able to have the public access airwaves as a way to be able to communicate their freedom of speech, their ideas, their vision for new and upcoming political figures to be able to get out there, to get their message out, because they are struggling against the incumbents, against the big power brokers, against the big money. And one way that they can really get their message out, whether or not they are a citizen watchdog or a new and up-and-coming political person or a leader in the community or somebody who's just got a brilliant idea, or maybe even an idea that they're not sure if it's brilliant or not, but they want to share it, is public access TV. And so I think in my future is to be indeed an advocate out in the public, in the political arena, supporting public access TV, not only just at the local level, but maybe even at the national level.
Oh, wow. Well, we're really glad we're able to give you the opportunity to do these kind of things.